Do. He has Botello right on his back bumper. Stolen Yanis, battle for fifth. Yanis, he'll take it. Now they bump wheels. Still bumping wheels on the front stretch. Yanis takes advantage for fifth right now. Big flip, holy smokes. Keaton stole hard in the catch fence.
That was a pretty nasty crash at Plaza Park Speedway up there in the little micro sprints, practicing how to do it like the big guys.
In the San Fernando Valley. We begin with breaking news.
Land and roaming around naked. That's video of him there. This happened yesterday at the park's New Orleans Square. Workers tried to steer away visitors from that very disturbing sight as that man climbed one of the buildings, exposing himself to the people below and anyone within view. He was arrested shortly after for trespassing, public nudity, and being under the influence of narcotics.
Thousands of dollars worth of merchandise.
One business says it's happened to them multiple times. And Inland Empire reporter Leticia Juarez takes us there.
We have bathing ape, we have essentials, spider merch, very expensive merchandise.
And that's exactly what a group of thieves had their eyes on. Not to buy, but to bag. On Wednesday, surveillance cameras captured a chaotic smash and grab inside Ryan Higuera's Galleria Montclair, a high-end sneaker and leisure wear boutique tucked inside the Montclair Place Mall.
There's just no place that's going to be safe. Hit 3 times on that. This smash and grab stuff is getting ridiculous. We need to put the clamps on it.
Issue that the United States has that's much bigger than China, which can be framed in the lens of resiliency and the ability to fend for ourselves. There are supply chains that have many single points of failure. And independent of whichever country that single point of failure exists, it could be an ally, or it could be a foe, or it could be a frenemy, that creates risk. And I think what we are learning, and David's right, it was really highlighted during COVID, we are not in a position to take care of what we need.
We are not in a position to take care of what we need. That should be disturbing, and that's what Trump's tariffs deal is all about. Let's hope, and I think we will, win the trade war and every other war because we are the United States of America, and failure is not an option. A bus rolled over on the 15 on the DeVore Freeway. 11 were hauled off, 15 total were on. The other 4 refused treatment on a very disturbing accident on the 15.
The largest rally that we have ever had. And your presence here today is making Donald Trump and Elon Musk very nervous.
Myriad of firefighters grabbed 2 rattlesnakes. Watch out, the weather's warming up. Rattlesnake season is coming. Of that, some of the sights and sounds at Paris Auto Speedway. Here's some of the action on Night of Destruction.
Dangerous Dan gets punted by the leader. And here comes a 7-day Osmus. Osmus on the low line, Brown on the wide line. Osmus gets into a boat, and the leader gets shoved into the back straightaway wall.
Some of the crazy action you see at Paris Auto Speedway, a Night of Destruction. Earl Cox was defeated by Jesse Gordon in the figure 8 division. Fun was had by all. Riverside County, you can see jumping all over the place from conservative in the 2000s to loving Hillary Clinton to saying we like Donald J. That man killed in a suspected DUI crash in Riverside. He was driving a truck with a horse trailer, hit a man who was killed in a tragic accident before, at the Border Patrol, and after. Here we go. Maybe. See if it will play.
How we do, we make a move and act a fool while we up in the club. This is how we do. Nobody do it like we do it, so show us.
So they're cleaning up the act there on the border, thanks to our great Border Patrol. On that, Tony Stewart won his first Top Fuel dragster victory up in Vegas. Congrats to Smoke. Very disturbing rollover crash over in Hemet at the 74 and 79 from Action Eye News. The great Eddie Castro, 66 years old, still getting it done at Speedway at Costa Mesa. Here we go. Rolling her in there. Going on the youngster. One of the great legends out there. Astro, as we say, getting the job done. See what's next up on the hit parade. Oh, Thunderbirds. We're out at March Air Show, put on a great show along with the skydivers and airplanes and all the good stuff that was going on there. True that the best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. Donald J. Trump had a earthquake here in SoCal. See if we can get her up. 5.2 in Julian. Oh, about 40 miles kind of northeast of San Diego. Kind of a little sleepy little community, gift community. Pretty wealthy community, but not very populated. Just heard of some, jars knocked over, glass broken, no structural damage. Pretty good shaker. I felt it here. It was pretty good, even up here, and we're about, I'd say, 80 miles north of that. Wife opens car door for me. Too bad. We were going 70 miles an hour, some of the stuff we post on IE Newswire to keep it real. IE theft enforcement is cranking up. The Eastvale and Norcosset teams, along with Heber Valley deputies, are busting lots of outlets in the area. So if you're into retail theft, you might want to avoid the Inland Empire. We hope this keeps up. Microphone on. So funky slide guitar music comes on every Monday through Friday, live at almost 5. We're a little bit early. Well, we got a lot of news to cover as usual on a Monday. What about that? Mom accused, suspected of drowning your 7-year-old daughter. I mean, geez. If it gets that bad, please call somebody. Drop the kid off, say whatever, fire department, cops, social services. If you can't handle the kid, relative, friend, mom and dad, grandpa, grandma, whatever. If you can't handle having the kid, please get them to somebody else. Bernie and AOC were out here. Well, they were in LA, and then Bernie rolled down to Coachella, where the big music festival was, and they were slow down the hill coming out today. So just be aware of that. In the Inland Empire, I guess what's going to go on another 2 weeks out there in that. So just be prepared to do that. Traffic is just nuts. We gotta get rid of this stupid, idiotic, these gas taxes, these charges, these $5 a gallon crap. And we got to get down to putting the gas tax and building some roads that's going to get us in and out of that. It does people no good. I don't know how people tolerate this stuff. It's getting to the point where you can't do anything in California with all the stupidity going on. Maybe that's why Riverside County is shaping up, like most of California, went right, left, right in the last 25 years. Had some great polling, or statistics, I guess I should say, from Celeron. He's pretty good on that stuff. He posts a lot on that. But as you see, we here in Riverside County, 51% in 2000 in the Bush v. Gore, only 44. We've always had kind of a libertarian third-party streak, which you will see, and you'll see Bush in 2004 really jumped up the high water mark in the last 25 years, 57%. Notice Democrats didn't go down as much. They only went down to 41. That most of that was the third party moved from Bush to, or from the third party candidates to Bush. A little bit of that, but not much of a shift as much. Back in 2008 when Obama ran, you see the third party break back up, but actually Obama, 50%, Republicans only 47%. The Romney-Obama election, still 49-42, even after almost the same. But you see in the 2016 elections that Hillary still won, beat Trump by almost 5 points. But you see the Gary Johnson-Jill Stein election where they got about 6% of the total vote, I think, on that. So that probably would have been even. Then Biden won big in 2020 of that. But, and notice that the third party vote went back down, but most of it went back to Biden. Trump basically got the same percentage, 44 and 45 in 16 and 20. But here's the big one, 24. Trump makes a big trouncing of Comrade Kamala, actually wins it by 1%. I think San Bernardino County actually won by about 3. They actually had a bigger spread. Third party vote went up a little bit, but not much. But you see that big jump. Almost all of the vote that went from, if you see that, from Joe Biden, went over to Donald Trump. And that's where he got his big victory in Riverside County and the nation, winning the popular vote by a plurality, almost 50%. What they finagled it to where he was only at 49.9 on the popular vote, almost the same. The Riverside County mirrored the nation pretty well. Actually, it was slightly more, but this was the microcosm shift we seen in 2024. And even as much as they're trying to knock down Trump on this whole trade thing, they're not winning the war. They knocked him down a couple percentage points on this, but it's not resonating on the approval rating, but it's not resonating. The people have had enough. We've had a strategic alignment. We're starting to get, and this is the genius of Trump and his negotiating team and the list of advisors he's put together this go around. They're coming in with a common goal. We're going to defeat communism. We're going to defeat the Chinese Communist Party. Russia has military power, obviously nuclear weapons. China has gained economic power in the last 20 years. They're almost 60% of our GDP. You go back when this started, when Bush was winning 57%, they were probably only 25% of our GDP. That's how much their economy has grown in the last 20 years. Gives them much more clout. And this whole, they're trying to make hay about the strategic metals thing. And oh, look at China's, all the naysayers, the left. Oh, China's cutting off our rare minerals. Well, that's twofold. We should have a stockpile of a year's worth like Japan did. Japan got caught in this stuff in 2010. China cut off their rare minerals and they were in a quandary, so they began to stockpile them so they wouldn't be in they couldn't be put in a squeeze by China if they did do retaliation or wanted to do that, or there was a war going on, or there was some sort of conflict, or there was some sort of supply chain interruption like we went through with COVID. So we've been around the gamut of this stuff, and we need, China does not have a lock on rare earth minerals. China has a big play in producing them. We have shipped the manufacturing down there, one, because of the slave labor, two, because of the environmental concerns, because they'll just dump the crap all over the place, and we act like none of that pollution will ever get to the United States, whether they're blowing black coal smoke out of their electric plants and or just dumping the waste residue off of the rare earth materials right into the ground or into the ocean or the rivers or wherever, because China doesn't care. Like Mao said, and Ping Pong's supposition is, we got 1.3 billion people. Even if you start a nuclear war and you wipe out 500 million of us, we still got 800 million left. You guys are completely gone. We're only at 350 million population in the US. And even if you throw in Canada and Mexico, we're barely at 400 million. They could take a devastation of 500 billion people gone, wiped out, nuclear war, whatever. We couldn't take that. So this whole tariff thing, like Trump says, is a national security issue. This is a pretty good synopsis of what is going on and where we're at in this whole deal. Here we go.
Has that's much bigger than China, which can be framed in the lens of resiliency and the ability to fend for ourselves. There are supply chains that have many single points of failure. And independent of whichever country that single point of failure exists, it could be an ally, or it could be a foe, or it could be a frenemy, that creates risk. And I think what we are learning, and David's right, it was really highlighted during COVID, we are not in a position to take care of what we need. So if I had to very precisely answer Ezra's question, I would say that we need to measure and protect 4 critical areas. Everything else, I think we can deal with some inefficiency, some single points of failure. But the following 4 areas, Ezra, I would say are sacrosanct. Number 1 is all of the technology, both the chips as well as the enabling technology around artificial intelligence. It must be a robust, largely American supply chain. It must. You cannot have single points of failure outside the United States, because what you see is even in allied countries, their posture towards things like free speech and other things can ebb and flow. Their posture on trade, their posture on defense. Okay, so that's number.
So he's absolutely 1,000% correct. We did not learn anything under COVID. You can't have this whole, I've seen this, Ito Benzivi of Highland Fairview's run that, oh, the supply chain and everything goes and we can ship it, and that works exactly great when everything is working right. Wait till there's an interruption in the supply chain like this guy's talking about. That's why Japan 15 years ago, after they got squeezed by the Chinese on the rare earth minerals, stockpiled a year's worth of what they thought they would need, and so they wouldn't get hit in a squeeze play. This is the fallacy of the big box warehouse. We're going to supply chain and we're going to get it from here, there, and we're going to ship it in from China and all that. This is the fallacy of it. 2 things. We got hit by COVID. This is the second part. If you're too reliant on other countries, if China has a 90% lock on producing all the rare earth minerals, not having them, they're all over the frickin' world. Probably the United States is probably one of the richest countries of that. Between Russia and the United States, that's where you're going to get most of your rare earth materials. We're rich in those. Energy, oil, gas, rare earth minerals. This is a problem knocking down the supply chain, or not having stockpiles of whatever you need: uranium, cobalt, nickel, gold, silver. The list goes on. It's the same as not having stockpiles full of toilet paper of that to go here, there, or we can make it if there's a disturbance in China or India or wherever they're making it. We have 20%, 30% capacity here in the United States. Now, it may get sticky, but we're not going to do without, or we're not going to be hitting the squeeze play. This is the fallacy of the single point warehouse. You used to have a master warehouse that would just supply one: toilet paper, oil filters, whatever. Then they would go to the distribution, whatever places, like say you got auto parts, let's use oil filters. You had one main warehouse down in Orange County that built all the oil filters. You just put Fram or AC or whoever's on it. Then that would go out to your parts supplier warehouse, and then to your regular auto parts store where you would buy an oil filter and oil to change oil in your car. That's what we've broken down in the United States, and that's what COVID exposed. Is this globalized worldwide supply chain this? We're going to make things cheap. Well, yeah, it's fine when everything's working 100% hunky-dory perfect. Soon as there's an interruption in the supply chain, you start to get screwed. No, it doesn't matter what price you have, you're not getting stuff. You're not getting chips. You're not getting toilet paper. The list went on.
What can change?
Chips. Got it.
Number 2 is energy. we have a critical deficit of electrons in America. We do not have the capability we need to make the energy we need quickly in many ways. We have supply chain issues on nat gas. We have critical supply chains that can be shut off by China around photovoltaics. So whether you believe in coal, whether you believe in nat gas, whether you believe in clean energy, we are in a very
We got to
fragile
shore
place.
that up. Okay, I think we're in
Number
agreement.
three,
Keep going.
We are in a shortage of energy. This is this whole solar wet dream. Like he says, coal. We should have all of them. We should have coal-fired electricity plants. We should have natural gas-fired electricity plants. We should have nuclear power, hydroelectric, and some solar, not against having a percentage of backup or, hey, when the sun's out, we don't have to run the nuke plant or the coal plant or whatever as much. We can save some there. That's where solar fits in on the 6 or 7 hours on the 180 or 200 days out of the year that it produces a decent amount of electricity. Yeah, you can use that to gap or slow down so you can shut down or slow down your other production. That's where it makes sense. Trying to say we're going to have all solar panels and we're going to run all the cars and all the trucks and you're going to have abundance amount of cheap power. We already know they're already hosing people in California on the solar deal. This is the main important part, second to supply chain, energy. This is what Trump is saying. The ability, intelligence is derived from your ability to think in the future. Your ability to think in the future is like this, and this is what Trump and the team are doing. You're looking at how you're going to have reliable sources of everything. Not saying we're going to 100% have everything built in the US of A. That's not what we're saying. It's not what Trump is saying. Quit making up, or, hey, the enemy, the true naysayers out there, this is what they don't want you to see. They don't want you to have a plan that's going to predict in the future. You don't know what it is. You know there's going to be another supply chain interruption like we've had in COVID. You know there's going to be interruptions in rare earth materials that you're going to need to run your cell phone, to run the technology, to run the grid. You know you need a certain amount of supply of food and a certain amount of supply of water. That's why it's important to build reservoirs, especially in California, to get you through the boom and bust cycles in rain and drought. This has nothing to do with global warming or climate change. It's common sense. You know, California especially has to have a lot of storage of water because we have very big up and down cycles on it. This is what we need to understand more. Here's number 3.
Number 3 there are critical material inputs that drive the material science of the future. Rare earths are an example. Going back to chips, things like gallium, things like phosphorus even. So we have a critical minerals and rare earths and material science input problem. And then the fourth,
we have an input problem. We don't have a supply problem. There's tons of it. Gigatons all across the world. We're full of rare earth. The only thing rare earth minerals is they're just harder to mine. Like the lithium that they do in China or wherever. It's very difficult to mine. There's tons of it. We don't have the capability to mine it all quick enough to run out in the next 6 gazillion years. What we have is a processing problem. 90% of your rare earth materials are processed and refined in China. This is what Trump is saying has got to stop. This is looking in the future. And it's a very good measure of intelligence, like Donald J. is saying. Here's the last in the hit parade. This guy was pretty good. He had it dialed. He put it succinctly into less than 3 minutes.
Ezra, are pharma APIs so that when American citizens get sick, we have the ability to not just make it, but also design it and manufacture it. Because some of these APIs, the active principal ingredients for many of the drugs, require very convoluted and complicated processes, cold chains, and the like. And again, there, we depend on folks whose view of the United States can change in real time. So if I had to say to you, Ezra, what I would expect is
their view can change in a hot flash. That's what the danger of this thing is. Just like with the pharmaceuticals. 90+% of them are being manufactured in China. They're getting the supply of the ingredients all over the world. Yeah, we can use slave labor in China, and Pfizer and Merck and all those have been getting, Johnson & Johnson have been getting fabulously well. The hedge fund operators have been getting fabulously wealthy on all this stuff. At the behest of the security of the United States. They've been putting our future at the hands of ping pong and others in China, in Putin in Russia. Yeah, they made some quick profits. And they made some spectacular gains, and your 401k might have looked good for a while. But it's going to be at your own peril if this stuff continues at the pace it is. And that's why Trump put this out on the X machine. The best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. We've seen it. We've seen Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom stop drill, baby, drill, and stop the export of natural gas to these other countries from the United States. And you've seen the inflation go crazy. Energy is where it's all at, whether it's electricity, whether it's gasoline, diesel, coal, whatever. Nuclear. You want it all. Hydroelectric, solar. You want it all. You want to produce as much clean, reliable energy at whatever point as possible. That will drive down inflation. You don't want to be hijacked by other countries cutting off 100%, or they've got basically a monopoly on rare earth materials, pharmaceuticals, and practically everything else in China. You can't allow, well, if you allow that, yes, you can allow it to happen. If you allow it to happen, pretty soon you will be the slave labor. and you ain't gonna like living under that. I get it. The oligarchs, the establishment, the World Health Organizations, the Klaus Schwabs, even the Jamie Dimons, and the George Soros to an extent. Yeah, they can see their future or their great amounts of wealth and power they've accumulated going down the tubes. But what they don't see is the future. If we continue on this trajectory, you may be blanket in tall cotton today. But when this thing goes haywire, just like it did in COVID, everyone's going to be in deep trouble. One of the things I ran across
places double down massively
in this Tucker Carlson about Costco doubling down on hating its consumers. This is a microcosm again of where you think, oh, I can go in and save 3 cents on something from a place like Costco. But you don't realize the damage you're doing to yourself. We were better off when we had the distribution of it wasn't, flown in from China and then went to a big box warehouse and that. And let me say, if people want this economy, that's why I support. If people want to order stuff off their phone and don't want to go to their local store and don't want to patronize their local mom and pop small businesses, and that's what you want, then that's the life you're going to have. You're going to have the life enslaved. You want to point your phone at the little thing at the store. You're too lazy to get out your wallet and pay cash for things, so they don't know 100%, 111%. They know more about you than you know. They know your spending. They can dial up your spending habits, your predispositions, your personality traits, predict what you will do in the future just because you've let them have this kind of access for what you perceived was a slight amount of convenience. Here's some from the Tucker Carlson Network on Costco hating on its consumers, his title. Here we go.
Costco is doubling down big time. I think partly because they're based in Seattle, and because I think Costco has doubled down big time.
That's like a warehouse store where you buy stuff by the pallet kind of
That's
thing?
it. That place has doubled down massively, talking about that we're going to continue to have quota systems about who we actually give preferential treatment to who.
I liked, first off, like me, Costco, never been in the place. First, I have an aversion to joining clubs and everything else. Aldi, the European grocer, has said does exactly what I go for. No coupons, no rewards points, no nothing, just the cheapest price possible. Give me the cheapest price possible. Don't need sales. Sales are another con deal too, mostly, unless they're just trying to get rid of a discontinued product. But when you see sales on beer or kumquats or whatever, that's a con deal. Just give me the lowest frickin' price on everything. That's what Aldi does. I don't need 37 selections. I don't want to get rewards points. I don't want gift cards. They make 20 or 30% off of gift cards because most people, that's how many percentage or whatever it is that don't turn them in. highly profitable business off of you. You think you're doing your family member, or send somebody a birthday card of a gift card to one of these big box stores. And they're making a ton of profit off of that. 25% off the top or whatever it is because people don't use them. Put them in, throw them in the trash or in the drawer and forget about it, and then they expire. Tell me the last time $100 bills expired. They might not be worth as much. They don't expire. This is the con you've all been bought into. And this is started with the Costco's and stuff. So from the Costco's, you got the big Amazon warehouse that most of you are ordering stuff up the kazoo on and whatever else.
Who gets their products in store based off race or sex or gender.
Seriously?
Yeah, they've been doubling down on this. So they're one of the companies that has kind of dug their heels in.
I hope they go out of business soon.
So, but it's really interesting. So and the way that I think about it, I think the company.
So you get the wokest stuff, as the guy said. Whether it's because they're based out of Seattle and they're about as tutti-frutti as San Fran in L.A. and New York and Boston and Chicago. It doesn't really matter. This is how you get all the stupid. It's how you get Barack Obama, the Messiah. He's going to save everybody. No more racism. He was the biggest racist president we've ever had, including the one that owned the slaves. But they sold you on, because his skin tone is a little darker. You know, his dad was really black. Came from Kenya or wherever. Sold you the biggest bill of goods. Promoted racism like nobody else has. And shamed many of you into voting for that prick. And that's what I'm using the word, prick. Because that's what he is. He's a racist prick. We have his record. More on the Costco files from Tucker Carlson Network. Here we go.
Companies that have just moved on. I think we need to get more to I'll go back to a corporate pluralism of whatever your mission is as a company, just do that. And however you need to recruit people, the best and brightest to your industry, figure out how to do that. I would say probably move on from the DEI.
Well, yeah, and I don't think we can say that the United States has civil rights law at that point. If you're openly discriminating against people on the basis of their race, then all the Civil Rights Act, it's all bullshit. None of that means anything.
Again, and this
and
is
so like, let's just stop pretending. Okay, so if Costco wants to continue with racist policies, then I guess everyone gets to have racist policies if they want, on whatever basis of any race they want. Like, you know what I mean? It's a principle. So either you're against and in fact banning through federal law discrimination on the basis of race, or you're not.
Yeah, that's it. And in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it literally says, like, you cannot discriminate based off race, sex, gender, national origin, etc.
1,000 subsequent laws and regulations
underscore
that point. So,
and this is funny. So the Senate.
So this is what I've said. The Civil Rights Act of 64 was the biggest racist policy of that. Took away your freedoms. Now, in the public square, should be no discrimination of any race, creed, color, whatever you want to say. But to take away your ability to discriminate or not on your private property was exactly the epitome of racism. If I want to open a gas station and I want to say I'm only going to sell gas to natives of Edgemont, the guy across the street's going to sell gas as long as you got the Benjamins to pay for it. Who's going to succeed? Let the market determine what's going to succeed or not.
the floor manager at the time was Hubert Humphreys, who became Lyndon Johnson's VP. He was one who was ushering through the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He said, this is his quote, says, "If this leads to quota systems, I will eat my hat." This was his quote. And that's exactly what we got.
He's been dead too long to do it. But yeah, no, it kind of wrecked the country.
So there you go, Mr. Hubert Humphrey and Lyndon Johnson. We said, I'm going to get all them Negroes voting for me and the Democrats. Well, he sold you. Well, he was the biggest racist, as probably 1A to Barack Obama. But they said an emotion and discrimination and slavery and reparations. If you get sold that bill of crap, that's what they're doing. They're making you the slave, as Mason Weaver has said, keeping you on the plantation.
Just back to Anheuser-Busch. This disaster happens, and it seems to be, I mean, according to the video that everybody saw, it really a product of this one decision. Well, it's the end of a chain of a lot of decisions, as you
Right,
so
a lot of bad decisions.
ably described. But the key decision in the fall of Bud Light was by this Alyssa Schneinhauser, whatever her name was, who went to Harvard. And there's this famous video where she's saying, you know, basically, I think the old white guys who drink our beer could use to be shaken up a little bit.
The fratty and out of touch. That Bud Light's been fratty and out of touch.
Sorry,
fratty and out of touch.
Fratty and out of touch.
Yep.
And I just have to say, I mean, she didn't run the company. She's the head of the brand. She has supervisors. If someone who worked for me, well, we sell Alp. And if someone's like in a meeting with me, like the problem with Alp is its users suck. And they've got like antique retrograde attitudes, and we just need to give them the finger. I would say, you're fired. Yeah. Because you don't love our people.
That's it. Exactly. So
why did no one say that?
But that's what's crazy is that she literally called the customer base, you know, the fratty, out of touch, and like, you know, immediately lost trust with the whole entire customer base, saying, "What are you guys talking about?" And
do people like to be lectured, scolded, yelled at by Alyssa Schneinhauser from Harvard?
And what's crazy about this, so the timeline of events was, so because we're coming up on actually 2 years when this happened. So this partnership that Bud Light did with Dylan Mulvaney and controversial transgender activists happened on April Fool's Day of 2023. So, and a lot of people originally thought this was a joke of like, oh, this is like Bud Light must be joking about this, because there's no way that they would ever do a partnership with somebody who was literally just at Joe Biden's White House advocating for gender affirmation care and biological men to competing against women in sports. But this is all of a sudden Bud Light's doing a partnership with this. Like, I don't understand this. Then 2 or 3 days later, that video comes out of Alyssa essentially being like, Bud Light is fratty and out of touch. We're going to be
fratty and out of touch.
And we're
going
to be more inclusive.
What?
That's the problem. Alyssa was out of touch. I mean, this is who's.
So there you go. This is what you have. On an April Fool, a little over 2 years ago, April Fool's joke, everybody thought it was the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light thing. No, they were serious. This is why Tucker Carlson is laughing so hard he can't control himself. Budweiser once was the biggest brewer, well, still probably is. American company was, that we sold out. It's absolutely nuts. We are so dingy. It's absolutely incredible.
Out of touch.
I mean, some self-awareness, honey.
It's crazy with what's going on. I mean, this is how out of touch I think a lot of the people in New York became.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden they're saying, you know, no, our customers out of touch. We need new customers, and the new customers are going to be whoever follows Dylan Mulvaney on Instagram, which I think was actually like mostly like underage girls. Because there were literally all of these now investigations going on, saying, wait a minute, you guys sponsor the Mulvaney who just has a bunch of underage followers? Like, what are you guys doing? This makes no sense.
Dressed like a child?
Yeah.
I mean, some dude dressed like a little girl? First of all, who's looking into that guy's personal life? You know, like that's dark.
Yeah.
But
yeah, anyway. So the partnership itself was obviously incredibly flawed.
No kidding. It was flawed. But this is how they con you into that. People thought and it was. They thought it was an absolute joke. But people in Budweiser tried to kill Bud Light over complete stupidity. Oh, we're going to have this dude who's dressing up like a girl and then telling everybody to drink Bud Light. Yeah, them Neanderthal single white males, who was probably your customer base at 111%, we're going to trash them because we want to be kind, and we want to be inclusive, and we want to have the rainbow and all this other crap. This was the inability of Budweiser to look in the future, like Donald J. said, and trying to run 147% on emotion.
The last 4 or 5 years, yes, we were going more towards this quasi-European socialism, government intervention and free speech and everything else. And we've now rejected that as a country. But I think what's difficult is that, yes, we've rejected it politically, but again, corporately, there's all these tethers from around the world because of the effects of globalization over the last 20 years, that you have a lot of these companies that, frankly, might not hold sort of those same American values.
Yes.
Talk Philip Morris, Anheuser-Busch InBev. Based in Europe. In Europe, they have quota systems for how many board members have to look this way or be that way over in Europe. And one of the reasons that I think, again, going back to the original question, like, how did this happen in the United States? Where Bud Light, the biggest beer brand in the United States, how do they have a partnership with Dylan Mulvaney? Well, they, I think, have a lot of these European type values now: diversity, equity, inclusion.
I'm so
diversity, equity, inclusion. It's ridiculous. This is the downfall of society. And again, trying to run on the European model. They wrecked Europe over this. Germany, England, France, Spain, all upside down trying to pull this, diversity, equity, inclusion and that, and unfettered immigration and the whole thing. And we're repeating the same stuff. Remember when Biden said, we're going to cut all this off. We can't have this. And diversity, equity, inclusion, that. And you got to have so many board members on that. You got to have some women. You got to have Dylan Mulvaney as a boy dressing up as a girl on the board of directors. They passed this in California. I think it started here. It's plain, absolute stupidity.
So grateful for that scandal, for the effects on the company of that scandal, and for you writing this book, and for what you just told me, because I think most Americans, I'll say myself, I have no idea. You just use Crest toothpaste. You have no idea what they're sending money to. I used Zen for years. I finally realized it was a left-wing company. I didn't get that at first. But most Americans just don't know what's happening to their money.
No, they don't. And then really, I think the eye-opening moment, even for me, where how companies have been co-opted is, I don't know if you meant to have the Black Rifle Coffee Company cup on your...
Yeah, I love Evan.
So you'll appreciate this story, and I write about this in my book, Last Call for Bud Light. But one of the opening chapters I have is, so I was president of Anheuser-Busch in the U.S., and I tried to do a distribution agreement with Black Rifle Coffee Company, because a lot of times the same people that were drinking a six-pack of Bud Light, Budweiser at night, were drinking 6 Black Rifle coffees in the morning. And so we were going to put the Black Rifle Coffee, their kind of 16-ounce drinks, on the same trucks that carry Bud and Bud Light to Walmart, Kroger, and 7-Eleven. And so I had this whole deal, and we were going to make a bunch of money on this great partnership. And our legal team, which was now based in New York City, and our external affairs team based in New York City, this is in 2021, killed the deal. Said you can't do it. I was like, what do you mean? Like, here's all the financials. This makes tons of sense. Like, this is a great company. They're growing like gangbusters. I said, can't do it. Company's too controversial. I was like, what do you mean?
Controversial.
I was like, the company, like, their mission is to serve coffee and culture to firefighters, police officers, law enforcement, people who love America.
And the coffee, just in point of fact, is excellent.
So there you go. He's head of Budweiser, puts this deal with Black Rifle Coffee, has a straight white male image, tough guy, military, construction workers, police officers. Oh, corporate says we can't have that because this is the whole campaign that was built on, oh, we're going to scare you to death. We're going to stomp all this out because then we can control. You take the testosterone out of society, and then it's much easier to control.
Excellent.
Yeah, great
I drink
coffee
it every day. It's great.
This is my thing. I mean, this is that's their mission. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And Budweiser, we had partnerships with Folds of Honor and other military, but in 2021, because of the whole DEI movement, which said like, ooh, they fund the police and defund the police was a big thing, kind of going on at the time. And ooh, military, I don't know about that. That seems a little bit too controversial. I'm like, guys, we sell King Cobra 40-ounce bottles, all over the place,
America's favorite malt liquor.
What are we talking about?
Do you guys make Old English 800?
No, we didn't make Old English 800. No,
that was a brand. I drank that as a kid. Newer generations are way more brilliant than we ever were. Edward 40 Hands is the funniest thing that ever happened.
Yeah, Edward 40 Hands was amazing. So
duct tape.
Yeah, we can't have military guys, police officers, construction workers, auto workers. We can't have them guys. Bunch of Neanderthal thugs. All they want to do is grab women by the hair and drag them into the bedroom. We got to have diversity, equity, and inclusion. We got to have Black Lives Matter. If somebody wants to take your property for any reason, we just get to do it.
But I can't remember where we were going with that.
Sorry.
No, we were talking Black Rifle, and yeah, so the deal gets killed, and that exact same, because it was too controversial of a brand. Yet a year later, that exact same department, based in New York City now, that killed the Black Rifle coffee deal, they greenlit the Dylan Mulvaney partnership. And the Dylan Mulvaney partnership, it was incredibly puzzling if you're a Bud Light drinker. And, again, man, I don't care how people identify or what they want to, do with their lives. But, one of the reasons that Bud Light became the biggest, most popular beer brand in the United States is because it was remarkably apolitical.
There you go. They were selling beer. They didn't care if you were liberal. They didn't care if you were conservative. They didn't care if your skin tone was a little lighter or darker. They didn't care. They were selling beer. The demographics of Bud Light match Black Rifle coffee will kill that. The demographics of Bud Light drinker did not match Dylan Mulvaney. A boy running around in a dress, acting like he's a girl. Oh, we'll go with that. Let's destroy the brand. It was a plot, and that's what I say they were doing. This dude is saying I put together this deal, gonna make us a bunch of money, gonna make Black Rifle a bunch of money. We're all gonna be singing Happy Days Are Here Again. We killed the brand to tug at your emotional heartstrings, or we're divert, or you're just mean. This is what's been this is where we have taken that wrong turn. And you're seeing we kind of made a correction in 16, but we didn't appreciate it. We went back and we made that wrong turn again with Bubbles Biden and Comrade Kamala. Now you're seeing even bigger whiplash back in Trump 2024. And like I said, we probably, as much as the pain hurt in 2020, we had to go through this because we didn't appreciate what was happening from 16 to 20. Now we have a greater appreciation. We have a little more tolerance and patience for doing this. Doing things and looking at things with intelligence so we can have a brighter future. That's why you see the more optimistic stuff. The guy at Budweiser who's putting together the deal with Black Rifle Coffee that's going to make them money is now got the strongest voice at the table. Saying, no, those evil white boys, they're drinking coffee and then they come home and have a beer, a Bud Light at night. We got to eliminate them. Can't have that toxic masculinity, too much testosterone, yada, yada, yada. Well, we need about 50% of that to make the world work. That's for you and the smarter half of the population. There's a reason us and the retarded half of the population are here. Because that makes the world go around. We can't run 111%.
30 seconds, Roy.
As Sean said, we'll be joining the Mighty Met KMET in a few seconds. Hopefully we'll have Dr. Kelly calling in. We'll get her thoughts on some of this stuff. And maybe hopefully we'll get to the cancer stuff on Dr. Pat soon, Sean. Some really, really, really...
Here we go, 10 seconds.
Coming up.
Designs.com. And remember to use code LOSESHOW and get 10% off your order.
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, live at 5:30 on the Mighty Met, 1490 AM, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire on the aforementioned AM band. Joining our vast video audience in the Evil FB Network, Rumble, X. I even think we're on YouTube. Check us out, subscribe, do all that good stuff as we usually do. Man, there's a lot of stuff going on. If you're, please. There's a mom suspected of drowning her 7 years old. Please, if for any reason you can't handle the kid, get him to somebody else. Relative, grandparents, police officer, Department of Social Services, something. Naked man walking around Disney. Some of the very neat stuff going on in motorsports we had on that. Sports. Sad passing of Ed Arnold, longtime sportscaster out here in SoCal. He was 86. But as we usually do on a Monday, we have the premier physician, as I've determined her in all the world, supreme expert on COVID-19 and just about everything else, Dr. Kelly Victory. Welcome to iNewsWire with Roy.
Hey, Roy, as always, happy to be back on a Monday, getting back in our
There you go.
Back on our regular day.
Yes, maybe hopefully your schedule won't be screwed up all through the week as it's doing on that. We ran a little bit on the supply chain, and there was a guy that said, along with and everybody's crowing about the rare minerals and all that stuff and everything. This is exactly what we should be looking at and what Trump is looking at into the future, whether it be rare earth minerals or pharmaceuticals. When we're dependent, not on the minerals themselves, but on the processing and putting them into a product, 90% plus from China with pharmaceuticals, rare earths, materials, or anything else. This is the danger that should have been exposed in COVID that we went through, from everything from these to toilet paper and everything in between, and why we need to have a more diverse manufacturing, energy supply, everything else that we control in the United States. If we don't do this, it's going to be at our own future peril, Dr. Kelly.
And listen, Roy, I could spend an entire hour talking just about this. The fact that we have had this over-reliance on China for pharmaceuticals has been one of, if not our greatest national security threat for a period of decades. This started way before COVID. It goes back multiple different administrations. It started with the military. The United States has become addicted to cheap products. We outsourced the contracts for the drugs, the pharmaceuticals for our military to China decades ago, so that we've been getting the blood pressure medications and the antibiotics and the insulin and all of the medications that our troops took from China. What's happened over time then, China underbid all the U.S. manufacturers, pharmaceutical manufacturers, and so over time, we have lost our ability to make even the most rudimentary things in this country. We don't even make things like amoxicillin here. We get 85 to 90% of all pharmaceuticals or their active ingredients from China. We're talking about relying on our greatest geopolitical foe for the things that will save our lives. It is one thing to go on Amazon and buy, a bauble for your garden from China or a T-shirt, but not your child's, diabetes medication or your mother-in-law's blood pressure medication. Well, maybe your mother-in-law, depends how you feel about her. But truly, all it would take is for the Chinese to either, number one, cut off the supply chain entirely, which they could do. They could jack up the prices exponentially, or God forbid, they could taint the supply. They have the ability to fundamentally poison a vast swath of Americans simply by tainting the pharmaceutical supply. This has got to stop. So will the tariffs impact drug prices temporarily in the United States? Perhaps, but I am with you. This is Trump applying what I call tough love. This is something that should have happened decades ago. I certainly was participant in bringing this to the attention of the Secretary of Defense more than a decade ago. I said, this is one of, if not our greatest national security threat. We cannot allow this to happen. It's bad enough to be dependent on another country, let alone a foe, for fuel. But for drugs, oh, my Lord, this cannot happen. We've got to refurbish our moribund pharmaceutical manufacturing capability in the United States. Oh, and by the way, the Chinese are not exactly known for their fastidiousness when it comes to quality control, okay? Which is why everything you get from China falls apart, or the holes don't line up when you go to, assemble the thing, or the screws are threaded, double threaded or whatever. This is not where you want to get your drugs from.
Explain the amoxicillin, probably one of the most used pharmaceuticals of all. Explain to everybody what amoxicillin is and what it's used for and why it's so very important, Dr. Kelly.
Yeah, amoxicillin is in the penicillin family of antibiotics. It's one of the most widely used antibiotics. It treats everything from, ear infections, bronchitis, sinus infections, skin infections, strep throat. We need it and use it because it is very inexpensive, and we can make it inexpensively here in the United States if we had the factories up and going. The problem is we don't. Here's a good example. The only manufacturing facility we had that made bags of sterile saline, the bags of salt water that you get from anything, from if you go in dehydrated with the flu to having, a major car accident or getting, shot in the chest, you're going to get, or you go into the operating room, you're going to get those bags. Our last factory that made those was in Puerto Rico and got wiped out in Hurricane Marie. Therefore, we cannot. So all of a sudden, bags of sterile saline went from $3 a bag when we were making them to we were importing them at $67 a bag that we had to import from overseas. Think about that, okay? A 20x times the price went up because we can't make sterile salt water in this country. Really. I mean, we just can't allow that to happen. But once you don't have the factories, and that's what happened with amoxicillin and, blood pressure medications and lots of other antibiotics, we simply lost our ability to do that. And unfortunately, it's not like you just flip a switch and all of a sudden you're back in business. The regulatory requirements are significant. It's going to take a while, probably 3 or 4 years, to get those factories back up and going full steam ahead. But it's the right thing to do. It will bring great jobs back to the United States, high-paying jobs. Pharmaceutical jobs are good, high-paying jobs, and we will not be reliant on anybody else, let alone our greatest geopolitical foe.
Yeah, there's not a problem with maybe offshoring, but not 90% of amoxicillin being made by China, maybe 20% in India, maybe 10% in Thailand. We make 50% of it here. That's what free trade should, that's where, if you let the free market work, that's where it will eventually wind up with. Like you say, it's not a cost deal per se on that. The amount that they save by making it in China probably is eaten up by the fuel costs of getting it over here anymore. So there really isn't an incentive. And that's why you're seeing a lot of American manufacturing coming back and a lot of companies wanting to reshore, as they say, or come back, because the political climate, no matter how much unstable we may think it's in times, is like light years ahead of the stability of a Thailand or an India or a China or a Russia or Ukraine. That's why they should be coming back, because, man, we won't see this and we won't get shut down by somebody like ping pong in China, Dr. Kelly.
Absolutely. And as you said, there's nothing wrong with having some amount of it contracted overseas. India, I trust India. I buy a lot of pharmaceuticals from India. They are very, very good at it, and they're very inexpensive, and they ship quality products. They are very good with their quality control. But the idea of being reliant on another country, certainly China or Russia, is a really, really bad idea. I just had a conversation last week with a celebrity, well-known celebrity chef, who shall remain nameless for the purposes of this show. We are talking about tuna, and he told me something I did not know, which is that we catch tuna in this country off of our shores and then ship it where? To China to be processed, and then they ship it back to us in cans of tuna fish. We literally do not process our own tuna here in the United States. Now, I can think of about 1,000 different ways in which the Chinese Communist Party could significantly screw with us if they wanted to, when you're talking about allowing them to process foods. It's no different than allowing them to manufacture and send us pharmaceuticals. This is really, really a bad idea.
Shifting gears a little bit, Pat Soon-Shiong has been very much more vocal, big cancer doctor, pharmaceuticals, cancer drugs, everything else. This is him on ABC News back in 2008. Here's the clip. Here we go. Maybe. Here we go.
Take responsibility.
But it's not just heparin that's made overseas. Roughly 80% of all the raw ingredients for America's drugs now come from foreign countries. And Soon-Shiong, the billionaire pharmaceutical exec, is calling for reform.
The future is China and India will be, so to speak, the breadbasket of raw materials, i.e. creating the raw materials for the rest of the world.
17 years ago, he said this, Dr. Kelly, not only about pharmaceuticals, which he was in, but raw materials. That's why we're in this rare earth crisis, too. I mean, we didn't heed what people were saying. A lot of us were saying this back then with the NAFTAs, the GATTs, and the so-called unfree trade agreements that were putting the onus on all this stuff. Now we're seeing the fruits of it, of this come about. We need to start listening and changing our course, Dr. Kelly.
No, as I said, Roy, this has been going on for decades. I said it long predated COVID and multiple administrations. I reached out with a group of people to bring this to the attention of the Secretary of Defense Esper during the Obama administration and said, look, we have got to stop buying these pharmaceuticals from overseas. Likewise, these rare materials and minerals, those sorts of things. So people are running around with their hair on fire right now about these tariffs and saying what it's going to do to prices. But the reality is it's what we need to do in order to motivate, incentivize, and drive manufacturing back to this country. It is an absolute essential for us to remain solvent, for us to remain independent, and for us to remain safe. And those are all things that President Trump has promised he would do. So I am in strong support of that. There may be some intermittent, interim pain and discomfort. It's no different than anything else. You cannot get strong without having a little pain. That's the way it works. But I believe that Trump is directionally correct in everything that he is doing. And to be clear, he put the moratorium on for 90 days, not because he was second guessing, the decision at all. It's simply because logistically, the government cannot negotiate with, 80 different countries in a matter of a couple of days. It's going to take a while. But you saw an overwhelming response. All of these countries immediately running to the phone and saying, we want a deal, we want a deal, we want a deal, and they will. And so this 90 days will allow the government to negotiate individually with each country. And if China is going to be, act like a petulant child and stomp his feet, okay, fine, good, go with 400% tariffs. I'm all, they will come to their knees. They will wake up because they need us more fundamentally than we need them. We can weather the storm.
You put up on the X machine, breaking CDC vaccine safety director may have destroyed records, says Senator Ron Johnson. Dr. Shimbaruko implicated in a concealing an 82% miscarriage rate among COVID-19 vaccinated pregnant women. Kelly, you've got to stop putting up this misinformation, fake news that you've been accused of and all of us for the last 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 years. Why do you keep doing this, Dr. Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big deal. This dude deep-sixed records that proved that those mRNA shots were causing overwhelming miscarriages in these pregnant women who took them. He's saying that the records can't be found. This is absolutely criminal offense. And if Fauci was complicit in it, and there's been some indication that both he and Rochelle Walensky may have known about this, and may have been, at least in some way, tangentially involved in this guy losing the records, then honestly, these are criminal charges could be brought against these people. But if you think about just the travesty, the devastation that people have suffered as a result of these shots, and now to find out that these guys knew about the harms and were actually hiding the records. So, today, as I sit here today, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, who took, by the way, $11 million in grants if they pushed the vaccine narrative, they are still pushing the vaccine narrative. And it's easy for them to do that because they have the complicity of the FDA and these buffoons who actually are hiding the data showing just how harmful they are.
It's incredible, some of the things that are coming out. And I think we just, again, hit the tip of the iceberg again on what's going on, because this, it seems like every day breaking, we got all this other stuff going on, but it seems like especially in the health stuff, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure probably Bobby Jr.'s pushing a lot of this, and others and yourself are starting to get a lot of this stuff out there so we can actually deal with the truth. Because a tragedy like this with pregnant women and anybody, well, I ain't saying, it's your kids, you can do what you want, or you should, ultimately parents should have the responsibility. But the government pushing that you should have your kids vaccinated, I think is going to be one of the all-time most criminal, heinous things that's ever been done to humanity, Dr. Kelly.
I agree with you. And regardless of where you stand on vaccines, I certainly have had plenty of vaccines in my life. The idea of mandating them, I think, has got to stop. We cannot, should never have been allowed when it came to COVID, because as hopefully everybody knows, the COVID shots were experimental. They were not FDA approved. They were only made available under the emergency use authorization. By definition, they were experimental. And therefore, based on the Nuremberg Code, no one should ever have been mandated, coerced, or otherwise by fear of reprisal, been compelled to take one of those shots against their will. And there are certainly millions of people who found themselves in that category, not the least of which were all of our troops who, many of whom didn't want them. And, a brave few left the military, left their pensions on the table, left storied careers and medals, and left their decades of service to this country with nothing to show for it. But many others, because they didn't have an option, stayed in, took those shots. Many of them were injured. Certainly happened with many healthcare professionals. I have close friends to whom it happened, where a married couple, one's a nurse, one's a doctor. They decide that the nurse is going to not take the shot, so she quits her job. The doctor husband takes it, gets Guillain-Barré, and is now in a wheelchair and can't work. Okay, his life is ruined. Total life destroyed at the age of 40-something because he was forced to take a shot he didn't want in order to earn a living to feed his family. That is something that is criminal. It can never happen again. And so I think that if Bobby Kennedy Jr. is able to do one thing in his 4 years at HHS, if he is able to end the mandates across the board, I think that will be a real win.
This whole autism thing, too, drives me nuts. I mean, it was hardly... And it isn't about diagnosis of everything. There's got to be something behind it, whether it's vaccines, environmental, food supply, poisoning, water supply. I don't know what it is, but we got to figure it out. You're on recently, you posted on the X with John Fredericks talking about it. This is another one of these criminality things that people have been talked into or guided down the path. It's damaging kids up the kazoo. We need to put a stop to it, Dr. Kelly.
Yeah, and I think Bobby Kennedy came out a couple of days ago and said that by September he's going to be ready to announce what he believes and have the data to back it up. What he believes is causing the massive increase in autism rates, and he and I are in lockstep on this. The reality is, as I said on John Fredericks this morning, if you look back at the escalating rates of autism over the last 50 years, and you try to map it against anything else, whether climate change, the advent of iPhones and, iPads and screen time, fluoridation in the water, different types of food additives. Nothing tracks along the trajectory of the increase of autism but one thing, and that is vaccinations and vaccination rates. The rates of autism started to go up exponentially beginning in 1987 after the passage of the Childhood Vaccine Injury Act in 1986. That is the act that Congress passed that allowed pharmaceutical manufacturers to make a vaccine free from any liability. They had total blanket liability protection. So if somebody was injured, maimed, killed by one of their vaccines, they could not be sued. And on the heels of that passage of that law, the vaccine manufacturers went into overdrive, and that's when the vaccine schedule exploded from 6 to 8 vaccines given in the first 18 years of life, from birth to age 18. It went from 6 to 8 shots up to where it is today at 72 shots. And that tracks exactly with the trajectory of the increase in autism rates. So that by itself is not proof, but it is damn compelling. And I think we are absolutely obligated to expose that. Certainly Bobby Kennedy and others have asked the FDA and the CDC to do the study, a very reasonable retrospective study looking at the rates of autism and other things, asthma, autoimmune issues, peanut allergies, to look at vaccinated populations and completely unvaccinated populations, people who never received a single vaccine. And there are huge numbers of those people, particularly in the Amish and Mennonite communities. The CDC has refused to do that retrospective study. They don't. Francis Collins said, we will never do it. You know why they will never do it? Because they already know the results. They know damn well that people who have gotten 0 vaccines in their life are healthier by an order of magnitude than those of us who got vaccinated. Rates of autism in the Amish community are fundamentally 0. Rates of peanut allergy, asthma, infinitesimal compared to in the vaccinated population. And that's what the CDC and the FDA do not want you to know.
As we say, the evidence suggests. Thanks for being on, Dr. Kelly. We'll do this again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Roy.
You got it. Dr. Kelly Victory saying it only as she can. Man, oh man, oh man. What a role. Again, hopefully we're turning the supply chain around. The rare earth minerals are coming back. We're going to put America back on a footing. We're going to get all this stuff straightened out so we can have a better future. Nothing else. We need to get this whole healthcare system and everything coming out. I don't agree. I ain't saying Bobby Kennedy's perfect. I ain't saying everything he says is completely accurate. But a lot of the concerns he's bringing up about vaccines and health and water supply and food supply and everything else are very legitimate and need to be discussed. And we need to come up with some answers, like autism. Why was it extremely rare and now it's down to what, almost 1 in 20 kids are getting it? Something's going on, and we better figure it out fairly soon before the whole gene pool is damaged on that. We'll be right back. As you know, I've been talking about standing up for our country, doing something. These big box stores stayed open while the little guys closed. Will our voices be heard? Does voting with our dollars work? PatriotSwitch.com gives patriots the power to walk away from the big box stores forever. Stop supporting the enemies of freedom now. That's why PatriotSwitch.com was created, for those who support America. PatriotSwitch.com. Is your car doing the hucklebuck and afraid you will be stuck? Well, head on down to Toyota of San Bernardino, Nissan of San Bernardino, Subaru of San Bernardino, in the San Bernardino Auto Mall, and catch a Camry, look ravishing in a Rogue, or be styling in a Subaru. Don't forget I-10 Toyota in Indio for those of you in the lower desert. You deserve to be the happiest human on the planet. So head on down to one of these 4 great dealerships for the car of your dreams. Spread the word. IE Newswire is now on every Monday through Friday, live at 5 p.m. on Rumble and KMET 1490 AM, 5:30 to 6 p.m. Join all the cool kids who want an eclectic look at the news without all the filters of the evil scoundrels of social media and the despicable dorks of the dominant press. Don't bumble and stumble. Subscribe to IE Newswire on Rumble and roll with the best hillbilly hoedown around. That's it. If you want to buy American, go to PatriotSwitch.com. If you need a new Toyota or Subaru, go to one of Cliff Cummings' great dealerships at San Bernardino Auto Mall, the 10 and 215 L freeways. Don't forget I-10 Toyota down in the lower desert. Well, that wraps it up for our Monday show, beginning of the week. Get ready to rock and roll. Donald J's on the job. We need to clean out some other infested places like New York, California, Washington, Oregon, Chicago. We got some interesting maps to show you on that. Even with this popularity rating and polls, maybe we'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow on the Tuesday broadcast, tax day. Make sure you get them filed or get an extension. But if you do have an extension, you got to pay the money. They will give you 6 months more to look at that. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But that'll do it for today. Mandatory, you're back here in 23 hours live. Best show in the whole wide wide world. Until then, see ya.
The proceeding was a paid program.
All right, Roy, take it easy. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
You got it.